Hello, Sam. How are you today?
Hello, Peter. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Peter Jekyll here from HandsFree, and I'm talking to my friend Sam Dharmasiri, who is the CEO at Seer365. And I've been wanting to have a chat with you for a bit because, as best as I can tell, it is an exciting time to be in your shoes, be one of your partners, or be one of the companies that's taking advantage of the technology that you guys are bringing to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're super excited about where we are with the platform, what we've released over the past 3 years, and what we've got coming in the next few months, and the future roadmap as well.
3 years? I guess we met 2 years ago.
That's correct. Yeah, we're actually 3.9 months into the journey of Seer.
But who's counting? Only the guy that has to run payroll every week, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about some of the stuff that's coming down the road. But for folks that aren't familiar with yourself, the company, what you've really brought to the marketplace, Discover over these last 3 years, absolutely, fabulous tool. I'd like to take an opportunity to give everybody an overview of what that's been doing for those last 3 years and how that's been built up for the next things you're going to introduce.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I kind of step back a little bit, I mean, the whole objective with Seer and the GYDE platform is to kind of look at the whole journey a customer, a partner has when they're on that cycle of looking at and implementing business applications. I've been in this space for 25 years now, and it's a tough place, both as a customer implementing systems and as a partner deploying them. And a lot of it's because we have ingrained ways of working. It's a very unstructured process, even though people think it's structured because they've got a methodology. But the reality is, we're using a lot of people to do things that don't have a lot of tools and guidance to support them. And the idea really was to kind of take that learning we've had in those times and previous businesses, and I've run some pretty large and small Dynamics partners in that time, and say, like, how can we make this better? How can we really focus on making that journey and experience better for everybody involved? So not just the partner, but also the customer. I don't think anybody sets out to sell or deliver a bad project, and equally, I don't think customers set out to make life difficult for their implementation partner. So at the beginning of that exercise, everybody wants to do a good job. So the idea really was to kind of look at that and see where we could build tooling to support the process, and then that's where we started with it. And Discover was kind of the first product we had, and that the goal there is to make sure that we're really understanding that customer's requirement, that they're very clear on what they want and need, and then how does the product that we're proposing fit into that, and making sure there's no ambiguity, there's a clear structured way of capturing those requirements and the estimates to deploy the sit on the back of that. And if you get that right, I think you got a much better chance of delivering a good project and being friends with that customer at the end of that journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I met you originally and approached using the Discover tool in kind of that traditional partner methodology, how to look at a new customer and get their requirements gathered quickly and efficiently, and then be able to, process implementation plan very quickly and efficiently. And I love that part of the business. And then I kind of went back to my roots for the last 9 years or 10 years, and have been more on the side of delivering the tool set for the value it brings to the end customer. And it's really interesting because it's given me the perspective of using it as a partner, but also, the interesting what is the customer? What is the end customer? What's their reaction to the tool set? And I'll share some of those ones I've had recently with you in a minute. But I guess my biggest question, so 3 years of doing, last time I figured out, you're doing 120 of these requirements gathering projects every month. What are the biggest surprises? What would you do different? What have you learned?
Yeah, I'm saying there's around about 120 end customers, individual end customers on the platform every month, and that grows as we add more partners to the platform and we have a bigger kind of footprint. Thing we learned is that the experience from globally is the same. So if you look at a customer looking at an ERP or a CRM project in Australia, it's the same process as in Canada or the US or in Bulgaria or Argentina. So that experience is kind of common. So that's kind of good. We have a disparate client base. I think last week we managed to get new partner contracts in Peru, in Denmark, and in the UK. So it's nice being able to kind of cover all that. I also think there's a different kind of expectation for a customer that's SMB versus enterprise. And then the other one that really was something that we felt was going to work, but we spoke to partners initially themselves. Customers will never fill this out themselves, do the survey. They need the expert consultants to really handhold them in. And actually, what we found is customers love using it. They love going through the survey themselves on the platform. A very, very small percentage don't want to do it. In my experience, if they don't want to do it, you shouldn't be working with them anyway. They're not ready for this type of project, because if they can't fill it out in the discovery phase, they're not going to be ready for the implementation. But I would say 99.5% of customers absolutely love the journey, and that's important. And I think we certainly feel that customers are ready to do a lot of the self-discovery themselves. They still need the partner to provide that kind of finishing expertise to advise them on phasing what's really important. But I think being able to capture those requirements in a structured way is something that customers enjoy.
Yeah, it's interesting that obviously I don't have as many under my belt as some of your other partners, but the feedback is really amazing. There is definitely a demand for getting projects right, and you initially have to explain to people that this is not a free tool. Because I think that a lot of folks are jaded by some of the free assessment tools that are readily available that kind of skim the surface. And so there's a lot of, oh yeah, I've seen a ton of these before. But the minute you take somebody into the product, and the level of sophistication and the quality of the questions jumps out immediately. But the thing that's important to me, even more than the quality of the questions, is the questions that aren't in there. Because I come from, as you do, from the dynamic space forever. And we all remember, SureStep. And SureStep provided the largest, most bloated discovery documents known to man. And it always amazes me how many folks are still using what I call, son of SureStep evaluation techniques. And I think the record evaluation I've seen took a year and $700,000. And then 3 months before go live, when I was brought into the project, the customer figured out that there were huge gaps in the requirements discovery. So, what did you spend the $700,000 on? But so to me, if you look at SureStep, the number of questions and the number of, irrelevant questions that are useful or germane to the discussion, that's as important. And I always tell people that you guys focused heavily on very focused business process questions. And one of the first things I did is I did some samples of filling out my own, and because I wanted to see if it came out like that 100% fit against Microsoft products, and it doesn't. So you guys really are unbiased, and that's the perfect approach. Unbiased questions.
I think you're right there. I mean, it was interesting when we did our first pilot of the platform many years ago. Our first survey had close to, let's say, 20,000 questions. Right?
20,000.
20,000 requirement questions, and the feedback from those initial customers was that it was just too complex. So again, it was looking at those, a bit like those selection spreadsheets that really covered everything, right?
Right.
And I think in some senses that it's just too much, it's not important. And actually, as a customer, you get overwhelmed by each individual requirement, right? But actually, so what we spend a lot of time, the content team spend a lot of time at Seer on is what's really important, what's material to a particular business process, what's going to be material to achieving a business benefit. What are core capabilities that the modern customer wants. So we kind of distill that. So an enterprise comparison to that initial 20,000, it's about 2,000 questions if you have everything in it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of a quite a major reduction. And for an SMB, you're looking at about 700 questions. So it's kind of really honing in on that. Now, we are working on getting to that next level down. If you want to open up into more, so right, we can do that, or we can use the design application, which then goes into that entity career detail. And the final point is, absolutely, we do want to make sure there's requirements that not purposely the Dynamics doesn't do, but actually, it's no point giving. And one of our early discussion with partners is, well, we only want to show the requirements where we have a fit. Well, that's just that's crazy, because that customer can go into the project and they'll say, oh, I really need that, and I should have. You lose that trust for that customer if you've not been open objective. And equally, from my experience in delivery, if there's a bunch of key things that the product can't do, maybe we shouldn't be selling that product in the first place, right? And the art of selling, deploying successful projects is selling the right project in the first place, and saying no to a customer project where it's not a good fit for you is as important as winning deals, right? So we all know that. So I think that's kind of the key that we learned in those areas around requirements.
Yeah, I think the higher you go in an organization at a software publisher, the more they will tell you they would rather have a good fit and pass on projects they're going to end up being, passed from partner to partner and end up in legal, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And what you find also is when you show the customer that these are the things that your team have selected as must-have requirements, and these are ones that are fit or partial fits or have the highest estimate, that customer's then really engaged, especially the C-suite, around, okay, well, actually, now I can start to look at the impact of these requirements against the cost and timeline for the project. So maybe I can tweak my requirements to get to that. And it's very hard for them to do that without an application like GYDE.
yeah, if I could brag on a couple of things that I have that I love about the application and that customers have really enjoyed filling them out is number one, as you said, it's not just a requirement and then yes or no, but it's kind of a stratification of, yeah, this is really critical for us, or yeah, we should have this, or this would be nice to have. And the thing that we always point out to customers is that the absolutely positively have to have functionality, you use that for your initial system implementation, because what that allows you to do is cut back on those big bang projects that are always prone to failure, where first you start with a blank sheet of paper and design the best system ever, and then have a go live date to bring everything live day one. And that's really resonates with people, that you can segment their requirements into day one versus what we need the next several days. And then the other thing that is really which I think is really I believe it's a new capability that you have, but been able to make really good use of it, is that when I take a look at your functional requirements in the tool, is you could look at it either in kind of the SMB format, which is by module. Because if you're coming from a Great Plains, let's say, you're used to looking at the general ledger, the accounts payables. But if you're more of an enterprise customer, you think often more in terms of business process flows. And a customer can look at their requirements either way. And we've had customers that have done both, because started one way and flipped to the other as kind of a edit check. And so absolutely, absolutely fantastic. So.
Thank you.
Yes. And the only thing I would say is that, I read the metrics that you guys pitch on your website, that you're saving 60% of the time and 60% of the cost over a traditional methodology for doing this. And I think that metric is completely wrong, because I think when I've talked to some of the folks that I've worked with and translated into having done these types of requirements before, we're spending 10 to 20% of the money and time. And I know you can't come out on your website and promote that, but having done this for over 30 years on all types of system sizes and organizations, I think it's 10, 20 times, and it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Well, I think you're right. I think it kind of cuts two ways, actually. So from a customer point of view, they spend too much time in evaluation, whereas they don't realize, I'm sure they realize that time is money, so they need to get to that decision point fast, and I think that's what we can give them. But also, I think partners are also guilty of overselling. They're spending a bit longer than they need to get to their point with the customer. Say, actually, this is really what your needs are. So we map it, and we want to get to that point as fast as possible, and that's where our application will help.
Yeah, and one of the things that I talk to customers about on an advisory role, when you're looking at an evaluation that is, that's at 20,000 old school questionnaire, how are those often delivered to you? It's by the most junior person in the organization that's asking a set of questions and then checking off your answers. Most of those folks don't have the ability to drill down into critical business processes and miss that. So if you're taking 20,000 questions and you're coming on site in the conference room, spending days, weeks, and months to do these with junior resources, contrast that against getting those high level critical business functions and being able to have, somebody that understands business be able to walk you through them and ask critical questions. It's completely different.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the process we're trying to get to, then it kind of leads on to where design fits into it. So GYDE365 Design is the next stage. So if you think about Discover being that high level fit gap, we kind of determine to the customer, what's a solution that fits you better? Is it BC? Is it fine supply chain? Is it CE? Combination of all of them. Then the next stage is actually what we have in our design product, where then you get to those 20,000, but you've already levered what modules or bits of the Dynamics suite you need. Okay, and even though we call it GYDE365 Design, it's not for necessarily the implementation phase. You can still do it in sales to get a more refined view of your scope, and that then breaks down into actual, the full detailed requirements. And you end up with that kind of a real view of how is Dynamics going to work for me. So Discover is more the high level, and then we use design to get into that real firm design that we're going to deploy.
So you jumped ahead of me, because Discover's the piece that's been out forever and executing phenomenally. And now we go from Discover into Design, which you say takes that initial set of requirements, and now we really fine tune it into what a project requirements is going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Discover, we might ask the question, do you want to do automated invoicing and billing, right? So that's a simple requirement. But then in design, we're going to work out how we're going to do it. So on what basis, which type of customers are we going to do that for? Is it for all of them? Is it for procurement? Is it going to be three-way invoice matching? All those sorts of detail nuance. That's what we get out of design, right? So we haven't had to buy Dynamics. We can still use this in that selection, and if I was a customer, I would do this all day long, because I'd rather invest an amount of money to make sure I know exactly what I'm getting before I'm committing to a major kind of system decision. That's really what design allows us to. We've had it embedded in there, even things like videos. You can actually see then how that feature works within the Dynamics product. At the end of that process, we can give a very clear solution design of how that's going to work, where the potential gaps are, areas in which we may need to bring third parties. But that is a holistic solution blueprint that we can then go to market for, or to come up with a firm fixed build price.
So I'm an end user, and I can use Discover, input my requirements, and we're going to do a great match. And it's going to tell us if we want to stay on the Microsoft platform, ERP platform, I'm going to go either BC or SCM. And at that point, you have people that say, well, I want to see what the implementation or design looks for both, or does the Discover really intend to drive you in one direction or the other?
Yeah, so it kind of informs you in Discover whether, so fine supply chain may give you 90% fit, but it's going to be much more expensive than BC. That's kind of your typical scenario. Or BC gives you almost the same amount of percentage, but it's going to be deployed faster, right? So you as a customer make that decision. When we go to design, we do need to know the target solution we're mapping to.
Right.
Okay. That's not to say you couldn't do it for both, but from a time point of view, you probably need to, because each survey is very specific to capability within the target solution.
Yeah. So when I think about 8-10 years ago, I stood in front of a user group and with a presentation that I was very nervous about, because I thought I was going to get booed off the stage. Because my thought process was that, based on my experience in the industry and 3 minor criteria for a successful project: on time, on budget, and on spec, there has never been a successful ERP project in the history. And everybody's like, yeah, you're right. And so I was very surprised by the reaction, because, like I said, I was expecting, folks to boo. But now when I say that, it's interesting. The response is people laugh, because bad projects have moved from being understood to being a joke, and which is ridiculous as an industry, right? And if we think about what is it that we're doing to fix that problem, and this is one of those fabulous tools, because when I think about one of the 2 primary causes for bad projects, it's bad requirements, or requirements that take forever, and then 2, what I call overly exuberant demos. And if you think about moving from Discover into Design, you can almost remove those ridiculous sales demos with that design process that gets you into the software at a greater depth, and to have a better understanding of how this is going to process your critical functionality.
100%, yeah, and I think the demos are a complete waste of time. It's like a good pre-seller will produce any demo that their customer wants. But what are you actually achieving, right?
Yeah.
If I was looking at a system deployment myself in the customer's shoes, I'd want to know really, where are the gotchas, how is this going to work in my business? And I don't want to spend months doing it. Can I, in a 3 or 4 week engagement, I'll be happy to pay for that, and work out, based on this is how it's going to map together and know where the gaps. And that's what we aim to do with design, right? And it's not relying upon, the problem we have is as a product set increases in capability, it also increases in complexity, right? And it's hard for all the consultants to know all the application, and that's what we kind of do with GYDE. We democratize it. Anybody can use it, but all the help, everything's up to date with the latest capability of product. So we can, try and push that customer to the standard product. When I first started deploying ERP products, I worked with a product at enterprise level where you couldn't change much. And so we had to do this old-fashioned thing of getting the customer to change their process to make the application fit, right? And what you ended up with was fewer customizations, and actually I think the customers probably got more value out of their deployments because they were able to kind of address inherent issues with the way that they work. And that's where I think we need to get back to. If we want to get faster deployments, faster time to value, we've got to try and adhere to a standard product.
Yeah. If you think about the Navision and Exapta products at the time, they were both sold on the fact that they were infinitely customizable. And so the idea was whatever it is you wanted. And it was, whatever whim the customer had. And really, it sounded exciting because you could have exactly what you wanted. But gosh, the nightmare, road that let us down. So one of the things we always pitch is, take something like the output from Discover and stand that up vanilla, and then come back and talk about what you might need as a as a customization. So I imagine that the level of effort for a BC design is dramatically different than F and SCM. Any level of difference on those two?
Yeah, I mean, on comparable scope, it all depends on the scope, what areas you're covering. But I would say it's probably, it's about 50% of the time effort to complete the survey. Now, the benefit of BC now, though, is we have released this month our build solution. So at the end of that design project and a BC customer, we can also have an automatic build of that BC solution, right? So that's pretty huge, right? So you imagine that journey where we think in 2 weeks, the customer can complete the BC design survey. And at the end of that 2 weeks, we can stand up the BC environment with all that configuration done. Right?
Now, I'm going to dumb this down for myself because one of the first things I got from a potential partner is, so wait a minute, Sam's going to stand up their BC environment. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to give the partner a file that they can then use to quickly stand up the environment for their customer.
Absolutely, yeah. So we think of the platform as the partner's platform, right? So when we talk about standing up, it's in that partner's environment. So GYDE is for that partner, and that partner will be able to stand it up and use that link or the files to set that up in that customer tenant, or you might be even in a partner trial tenant just to start that. That extended testing. But the idea, though, is we want to get that customer to work on to go into your point, right? A lot of times we have gaps in customizations. The customer doesn't really visualize how the solution works in that particular process, right? So the quicker we can get the product in front of the customer to play around with and say, okay, all those things you thought was a gap, which it typically are because I want to do exactly what I did in my old systems in the new system, which is ludicrous, right? So we can show them, focus on your target process. I have an input, I have some outputs, let's put it into the system. And if we can get that fast in front of the customer, I think we'll have a much better success rate on projects. Yeah.
And then I think about the tool sets really from the standpoint of how does it help me as a partner? But I also think about it as a advisor to end users. And one of the things from an end user standpoint, and this is one of those things that just happens in the industry. If you use Discover and now Design to get you a very, very tight implementation plan, and with that, you can associate hours and potential costs. Then what you do is you take this out to the marketplace and say, Mr. Partner, I want to implement this solution with these requirements. Could you send me a proposal? And then I always talk about the different types of proposals that you get, shock and awe, and then the low ball. And then your tool is going to have you right there in that middle with a realistic, proposal based on a lot of history. And then what you can do is you can say, okay, Sam in his tool set thinks this is going to be $500,000. Why is your proposal 50,000? And why is your proposal 5 million? At least now what you have is you've got a completely different set of understanding of how to evaluate proposals.
Correct. You're letting the you're kind of making the customer more informed, right? The shift of power is perhaps too strong because we don't want this to be adversarial, but I think having the customer be more informed, I think again leads to a better project. There's no excuse for the customer to say in the part, well, I didn't know that, right? I wasn't clear on that. So going back to your extremes of estimate from the different parts, well, it allows them to really say, okay, well, why is yours different? What are you missing against my straw man that I've got already, and maybe the shopping door has a lot of things that we don't need, right? But at least it allows them to understand and form a baseline. I think that's where any sort of evaluation needs to have a baseline that you can kind of center your decision upon.
Yeah, it was interesting. I delivered the results of a Discover session late last week to a customer that, as I was taking him through some of the results, I could tell he was very uncomfortable. And every time we reached another, some kind of a critical result, I got kind of that pushback and wait a minute, I researched this. This isn't what I know. And we'd have a conversation about it. And by the end, his response was, oh my gosh, this was the best thing I could have done, because even though I did all this research and thought I had all this information at my fingertips, what I found here is completely different than what I thought, and this is invaluable. So I think the issue there obviously is that when you research this stuff on your own, a lot of material that's available is marketing focused. When you're talking to anybody, they're going to be sales focused, and people are going to put the best spin on stuff. So
absolutely, I know there are some tools coming on, to my AI, using AI to drive this stuff. And why can't we use it? Well, the reality is it's only going to be looking at the language, the models that are out there, and those models of information are out there on the World Wide Web. So they're typically painted material, right? They're either somebody with a score against the product or for the product, and so the benefit on top, what we have in Seer is that we have experts that review that. We now have over 70 partners on the platform. So on a particular requirement, if we have a bunch of partners say, look, Seer, your team have said this is a fit and it's not a fit, or we will generally go and think about it. We will go and review it. We will go and really test whether they think it's right or whether we think it's right, but also whether if somebody, and especially the publisher, says something's a fit, we also have a duty to say, well, is it actually a good fit? Does it really do what a customer would want to do in that process? And then they're the ones we say, look, actually, it's a partial fit, and you would need to investigate in more detail. So I think there's the platform as an application is one thing, but I think the content and how we continuously assess that information is the real value of the platform.
Yeah, and I think about the challenge that's in front of you with the 70 partners, and I, as understand, you also work directly with some Microsoft representatives, right, to do this. Yep. And I think about the challenge of this. If you were to produce results that were wildly inaccurate, how long would you last? Because the credibility in this industry like that would be shot instantly.
Correct, absolutely. Yeah. And when we bring on new partners, the first thing we say is, look, put a recent bid on our platform, right? And compare our estimate, our core estimate against what you've estimated. So far, we've never been out by more than 10%. On average, it's about 5%. Right? So, we're strong in terms of what we feel our estimates are. But ultimately, as I say, it doesn't really matter. If the partner wants to change them and really lowball them, they can do, but they're just going to be out of business, in a short amount of time because they're underestimating. So I think that the data and the information that we have in the background that we surface and make available to partners is hugely important.
Yeah. I mean, you were in this industry for a long time, on the implementation side, and I think you were around in what I call the good old days, when a big on-premise sale had large margins if you were a good partner, and that money's gone now, and the money to a partner, from licensing is not the same, and so the pressure now to sell deals for the implementation side, that's stepped up, and that's even more fierce. And so you can't afford to lose deals, and so you've got to be more aggressive in the sales cycle, and that leads to some bad behavior, unfortunately.
Yeah, and equally, you can't afford to spend the amount of time you spent on a deal.
Yep.
So in my old business, I had 60 sales and pre-sales and bid managers, right? And we won maybe, let's call it 70 deals a year, right? It's not enough. You can't that would scare me now. You'd have a heart attack having a team that big. And I think most partners really should look at that cost of sale and the cost of sale, the time of each sales cycle, and really start to bring that down. Otherwise, they will find themselves in real challenging situations.
Hang on a second, Sam. I have to open up my calculator. 60 sales guys, 70 deals. I got to open up and do that math. That is scary.
Yeah, I mean, they were big deals, right? But in the on-premise world, you would, with 60% margin on a upfront license of $1 million, that there were days in which champagne was flowing, right? But now when the customer only has to buy a small amount of users to get their application running, and you only get your money when they go live, right?
Yeah.
And that should change behavior in one of two ways, right? And both ways. One is you've got to reduce that sales cycle, and secondly, you've got to deploy faster, because you're not going to get your advisor's fee on the main project unless they go live. So why are you going to take 80 months to do a project which you could get in 8 months if you really honed in, as you said, on the must-have requirements, on the minimum viable product, and then build upwards and build that long-term client relationship? So I think that the kind of the move to the cloud and SaaS is really should have changed the partners model, and I don't think it has in many cases, and they're still kind of doing the same old things and then trying to make it work. But I think there is definitely an opportunity and perhaps a necessity to change.
Yeah. It has gotten rid of a lot of the silk ties and Gucci loafers on the sales guys, but I've noticed that. No, I think if you can't do things more accurately, more efficiently, and faster for the customer, then you're going to be left behind. Because I understand trying to because I come from the same world, from the partner world, and I understand wanting to keep junior resources busy, doing requirement studies, gathering the information, to implement the project, all these different steps. But you're going to, if you think about how much money is always written off on projects, forget write-offs, do this stuff correctly from the front end, do it faster, do it more efficiently, everybody wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got Discover, which is the war horse, which is fabulous. Design is that next piece, which is going to take Discover and build more formal, detailed implementation plans.
Plan, specification, so all the build plan goes into as your DevOps solution design documents for the customer to review. Gives you all the configuration information you need to do to set up core product.
Yeah. And that's something that's vastly overlooked is on the FNSCM side, the amount of interface there is with Microsoft and their systems on an implementation, and automating some of that stuff is brilliant because, depending on skill level and time, et cetera, the amount of resources and time that you have to spend interacting with Microsoft and their portals to implement the ERP is it's quite extensive. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we built in all the kind of standard templates. If you're doing a fast track project with Microsoft, you need to do those outputs, which can burn 2 weeks of time to achieve very little discernible outcome for the project. But you've got to tick the box that Microsoft make you tick. So it allows you to produce that. And, I'm not against those things. I think if they add quality to the project, great. But it needs to be done in a way that benefits the customer and doesn't detract in terms of cost and focus. People are only doing something to achieve a tick in the box. That's not nonsensical, right? So we want to try and integrate that into as you're completing the process in the app platform, we're also producing those as an adjunct to the process.
So a little bit different between the BC side and the FNSCM side, obviously, level of complexity. And we have Discover, we have Design, and then Initiate, where on the BC side coming up, we can stand up a system based on the data we've collected.
Build, yeah, build.
Sorry.
Build. So build is where now we have the product configured in BC. So all those settings, all the core metadata that you've brought in, that'll be in the platform. So really, then the customer can then put in some test data, so customer suppliers items. We can start to do some UAT, do final configuration, and we're good to go.
And everything is fantastic. I'll leave you with one last question. When can I expect the same thing for FNSCM? Because I know it's easy to do, right?
So we built a platform to do it all. So we're focused on getting that whole BC journey end to end. So we will release Fund Supply Chain Q4 this year. So
By the way, I was just kidding. I know it's incredibly complex, building that. My hat's off to you.
No, it's pretty much there. We just want to kind of, partly from a marketing point of view as well, we want to get the BC partners fully kind of on board, and then we'll do the supply chain from a launch. But yeah, we're thinking probably December that we'll have that out.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, pleasure speaking with you and a pleasure working with you. Yeah, one of the things that I've been looking for, for the last 8-10 years is how do we do stuff better in our industry? And this is the first big commercial product that I see focused on that. And I see nothing but success for, everything you're doing. So congratulations. It was nice chatting with you.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.